Alright, welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about why I decided to jump into crypto. So let's jump into it. Okay, right from the start I want to say I'm not here to play the hype game. I'm not here to invest any money in the near term for sure. I'm here for a much deeper reason that I'm going to explain now. So as you might know, I have another channel that you can find under Nick Redmark, where until now I've been talking about my own personal development and psychology and so on. And only a few days ago I talked about a change of direction that was caused by a thinker called Jordan Greenhall and the influence and the impact it had on me. And the core concept can be found in this video called The Rivalrous and the Anti-Rivalrous. Let's make a summary. The rivalrous is something that is scarce, something that if you have it, I don't have it. So we have to compete to have it. And the problem of distributing the rivalrous in the most efficient way has been the problem of civilization until now. And the market is in part the solution. The problem is that this is coming to an end, whether this will end in complete collapse or in something new. That's the question. The interesting thing is that Jordan Greenhall makes a proposal as to what the next thing could be, and he calls it Game B. And Game B is the game of the anti-rivalrous. And there are some examples. So the anti-rivalrous is the thing that if I have it, you can still have it. And it's actually better if you have it too. So for example, language, right? If I only speak a language, it doesn't help me. If everyone speaks a language, then it's very helpful. Or a new theory like calculus, it's much better if everyone knows it so everyone can focus on the next thing, and so on and so forth. The economy of the anti-rivalrous works in a different way than the economy of the rivalrous. It has new playing rules and it has actually way more potential than the rivalrous. And so this is what I decided to dedicate my free time on, playing this game B and playing the game of collaboration to generate this new kind of economy. One area in my life where I have already experienced the fruits of Game B is in the open source world. Everyone is profiting from the efforts of everyone else in the open source world. As a software engineer, this type of game is very real and its potential and its power are very real. So the question is, will it expand to the rest of society? And there are some good reasons why this should happen. One thing, for example, is the public conversation. Right now, there are many reasons why the public conversation is not complex, not nuanced, and polarized. So it's all along the right, left wing politics axis. The problem is that reality is way more complex. So people who don't find themselves along this axis, who are kind of outside this narrative, are outside of the discourse, but these people have been becoming popular online in this kind of more decentralized, weird network type of communication, not the broadcast one. And so some have been forming this new network, like the intellectual dark web. So another person that I think has a lot of insight is Matthew Pirkowski. And what Pirkowski observes in this talk with Benjamin Boyce is that because these people don't fit the narrative, they are a risk to the powers of Game A, if you will. And therefore, they will increasingly find themselves demonetized. And this is what happened, for example, with Patreon. Carl Benjamin, who was banned, even though he didn't break their terms of service. So people have been thinking that Patreon is the future of being paid, but if you really are a voice that is outside of the accepted narrative, then it's actually a risk to you. And so that's why people like Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson have been pulling out of Patreon and thinking about what could be the alternative. And that's the interesting part, that these people have been mentioning crypto as a possible solution. And Pirkowski talks about this concept of a minimum viable wheel, right? You cannot build a part of a wheel and still have it function. You need a full wheel. And so it takes a bit of time until you have a minimum viable wheel that can really then start the revolution. And he talks about how these new economical models need to kind of form a closed loop where a community can start living completely within the new crypto system. And so this is the new frontier. Now let's go back to Jordan Greenhall. One of the things that we haven't solved yet, he talks about, is governance. We need new forms of decentralized governance. And in one of his talks, he seems to be betting on DAOStack. And in his interview with the people from DAOStack, he talks about why. Anyway, just remember that in the crypto world, things go extremely fast. So meanwhile, he might have changed his opinion. Anyway, DAO comes from Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And the people from DAOStack are building basically a toolkit that people can use to build these decentralized autonomous organizations. What's interesting about Greenhall is his thesis is that the crypto world has to go through 3 phases, 2 of which already happened. So the first was the invention of Bitcoin. And the development of Bitcoin was a top-down design. It was one paper that had already all pieces in place. And from then on, like a lot of other cryptocurrencies emerged. But then people needed to step back and think, okay, we need to change the rules a bit so that you can actually write applications on top of that. And that's what happened when Ethereum came out. So again, a new kind of revolution, a new design from the top down. And now what Greenhall says is for governance systems, again, there needs to be a basic toolkit, and perhaps DAOStack could be that option. And we don't know. In the conversation I mentioned before between Pirkowski and Boyce, he mentions Holochain. And since this conversation is more recent, that might also be a promising thing. And so this is a summary of my current knowledge of the things that I really want to look into. I'm just jumping into the waters of crypto. I've been knowing about this for a while. I remember when Bitcoin was worth $4 and I didn't buy any. And so better later than never. So that's the situation. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.